What's up, everybody? Welcome back to D's Analysis. We're going to be checking out MSTR and Bitcoin today. So it looks like MSTR continues to bleed out as Bitcoin continues to fall. Bitcoin had about a 1% down day. Let me see what IBIT had just to be exact here. Pretty small day. Nothing too major. So we closed up here at 63 the day before. And we closed down 3.5, and MSTR closed 7% down. So that's kind of what we're dealing with today. As you can see, MSTR underperformed IBIT by 3.5%. We closed at 280.81 on the day, and post market we're sitting at 279.60. Now, when you take a look at the structure that we're currently sitting at, we're right on the cusp of breaking through that structure. Technically, we already entered it. We pierced it. We went down to 275 or 276, and we wicked back up slightly, closing right back on top of it. But it is definitely something to keep an eye out for. We have these levels drawn out for a reason. Expect some kind of chop here, or at least some kind of support. It looks like we found a little bit of a little bounce there. Nothing too major though. We'll see if we can continue to chop, find a bounce, or if we actually just continue to fall through, and then we find our bounce off of this next structure. It all depends on the momentum on Bitcoin, which we'll go over later in the video. Right now, it looks like we're just continuing this downtrend that has been established already for some time now. As you can see, we had this first leg here, and it looks like we're trying to play this second leg out. And we were talking about this a long time ago. Of course, we didn't want it to happen. Try staying, optimistic on the price action. But after seeing this red engulfing candle to the downside after this sideways chop and slight push up, it really started to feel like that bear flag was starting to be formed. And then seeing these two following weeks definitely starts to make me believe that we could actually see the whole move play out, or at least close to it. Maybe it pushes down to 265. Maybe we don't know. We don't make it all the way down to 255, but I'm sure if we do close underneath this structure here at this 280 to 271 mark, this gray structure here, then we could probably make it to that 255 mark. If we close underneath, especially on the weekly, expect some kind of retest. If we maintain that close underneath, then start talking about the 255. That definitely will look like a possibility, and more than likely, if we can close underneath, hold it, then we'll probably see that push to the 255 mark. Now, ideally, what we would like to see is some kind of chop, build some kind of base here, kind of like what we saw over here, but actually push up higher. So some kind of chop and then a push to this next structure over here at, that 313, 310 mark. On the weekly SMAs, our 20 is still pushing down on the 50 currently. And on the daily, we still are in the same position. Our 200 is above our 50, as the 50 already pushed down. And our 20 is kind of holding this downtrend intact as we continue this momentum to the downside. On our daily Bollinger Bands, we are pushing towards the outer band to the bottom band after having a move up to the middle band. And it looks like we found, confluence with this middle band and this structure here. We didn't quite get a touch, but it looks like it was enough just to continue the move. It looks like the move was so bearish that it didn't have enough momentum to push up even higher. And actually, when we take a look here on the daily, you can see how strong this bearish move is in terms of a fib. You can see that we didn't even push up to the 382, just slightly past the 236 and a continuation down. So that goes to show how powerful this move is. This move would show that the bears are fully in control here. If we were to see a deeper pullback, then that would go to show that there's some kind of bullish momentum, but there is really none, because at least if you make it to the 0.5 of 618, that goes to show that bullish momentum was able to pull the move at least 50 to 61.8% of the entire leg all the way back. But it couldn't even do that. It could only pull it back like 20 something percent, and now continuing the move even further down. So it goes to show a lot of momentum to the downside, and it looks like it's picking up steam, especially after seeing this large down day that we had today. So when you take a look at Bitcoin, you can kind of see this rising wedge that we had. We were pushing up, holding momentum pretty well, and then once we got this weekly close underneath this downward sloping trend line, we got a retest, and now we even pushed a little bit further down. And if we can pierce underneath this 103 level, then we're going to start looking at this level over here at about 100K to around 99, 98.7K. And of course, if we lose that, then we can fall down to the 93 to 91 mark. But at the moment, we're still holding it. So hopefully this just turns out to be a little wick, and we can actually have a green body fill the rest of this candle back up and continue the momentum and this upward trend that we had. Now we are at a key point where we're at the major support and resistance at this 106 to around 109 mark. So we're right there, that's smack in the middle. Ideally, we want to get a close back above it and start playing back above that on the upper part of this range instead of the lower half. Once you start playing with the lower half, you start looking at those mid 90s to the low 100s. We're still waiting to see if we end up getting that blow off top move that we've seen in the previous cycles, which we have yet to see so far. But everything is always subject to change and things happen very quickly. But if we were to see it, then I would expect some kind of potential top at the midline right here, this white line, depending on where we hit it. That's kind of what I would be anticipating, especially since we've seen resistance multiple times. Of course, the ideal scenario is holding above it and using it as a floor. But the way the momentum's been going lately, it looks like that might not be the case. But like I said, we're still in Q4 of 2025. We still have the rest of October, November, and December. So it's still technically early on within Q4, and a lot can change. Hopefully, the momentum at the end of the year, because of the holidays, can potentially carry Bitcoin to higher targets, maybe to this midline here. Maybe we touch that 140, 135 mark, depending on when we touch it. If we were to touch it this month, it would be sitting at around 138. If we touch it next month, that's going to be closer to 145. If we touch it in December, that's going to be around 150. The ultra bullish scenario, which we've already spoken of multiple times, is making it to the top of this range here, which we've already seen twice. We had it in 17 and 21. The thing is as Bitcoin's market cap grows, it gets harder and harder to make those significant moves like we've seen in the past, because it takes more capital to move Bitcoin's market cap. So if we were to see a move like that, you're talking about Bitcoin would have to go from 107K all the way up to around 350, 380K, depending on when it touches it. That seems very, very far-fetched, but anything can happen. In terms of our monthly SMAs, we're still holding pretty well. Our 20 is still sitting at around 86K, so we're pretty solid there. On the weekly, we're underneath our 20, which is not a good sign. That, in confluence with this upward sloping trend line, this horizontal structure, that is enough to put downward pressure on Bitcoin. And we've been seeing that after getting a bounce off of our 50. So we want to see, at least, if we were to break this wick, we want to see some kind of bounce off of this 50, like we've seen over here, in confluence with this horizontal structure over here, to potentially push price higher and stabilize Bitcoin to potentially see higher prices. On the daily, we've actually fallen back underneath our 200-day, which is not the best sign. It was looking pretty solid after getting a close there. We closed back above it, using it as a floor, and then we found rejection off of the 50-day and the 20-day. And now those are about to flip as well to show more bearish momentum. And we just closed back underneath the 200. So that could be a indication that we could see potentially more downside. MSTR divided by IBIT continues to bleed out, sitting at 459. We're seeing fresh lows. This is our lowest close on the daily that we've seen in a very long time. We're sitting at 459. We did make it down to 453. And when we take a look to the left-hand side, if we do lose the structure, we could see a very steep fall off to the next structure, which is going to be sitting around this area here, potentially. If we do see that, then it could potentially take us down to around 380, 395 to around 385, something around that ballpark. That would be a severe underperformance of Bitcoin, which means MSTR would be falling off a cliff even further than it already has if this were to play out. Remember, things are always subject to change. This could always flip back around. When MSTR catches momentum, this thing absolutely rips. So always be aware of that. On the daily, the 20 SMA on the daily, like I said, it's just holding as a very, very important level in holding this trend together. And we came back for another retest and continue down after multiple retests of this 20. The momentum just continues to the downside. Tether dominance is ripping to the upside. It's pushing to higher targets. We're hoping to see some kind of downside and rejection here at this key level. We definitely don't want to break it. What we'd like to see is even if we push up higher, we just don't want to break this wick. We would like to see this wick being this high, the next one being the second one, and then this being the third highest one. So you want to see these highs getting lower to show the loss of momentum, and then maybe we can start to fall back down to this next structure, and then we can start talking about falling back in this range, breaking this upward sloping trend line, and so on. Right now, with this momentum that we're seeing on Tether dominance, of course, it's bearish for Bitcoin. But on the bright side, we have this key structure. Like I said, this is acting as support and resistance multiple times, and we are at this key level right here. So I am expecting some kind of rejection, at least temporarily, which could mean a little bit of upside for Bitcoin potentially if this key level of support and resistance actually plays out. On the SMAs, we're seeing a little bit of bullishness with the 20 and the 50 on the weekly, and on the daily, we have our 20 supporting, our 200 supporting the 20 right now as it's breaking above it. That's a very bullish sign, which is bearish for Bitcoin. So we definitely want to see this flip back to the bearish side so we can see some upside for Bitcoin. And of course, when we have the overall picture here, it's actually not looking too bad. If you actually just connect these highs from here, you can see that we're actually creating some kind of lower high structure. You can see these peaks are getting lower and lower every time. So maybe we're just actually riding this downward sloping trend line, which means we could see some upside for Bitcoin if we continue some kind of trend like we've been seeing, where we're going like this, and then maybe we actually make our touch down there on the blue line, and that's where we get our cycle top, and then we go into our crypto bear market. But if we hold this downward sloping trend line, that would be incredibly bullish for Bitcoin. It could be playing out after we already got that touch over here, so it kind of makes sense. But things are, like I said, always subject to change. But it is looking pretty solid in terms of this downward sloping trend line. If we were to break back above this and hold, then that could start to bring a little bit of worry, and then we could probably start seeing the 90s on Bitcoin. But we're still in the same camp. We're waiting for potentially higher prices on Bitcoin, and we're waiting for a touch of this blue line, unless this was already our top for the cycle. Hopefully not. At that 125 mark, we'll be on the lookout for that. I'll keep you posted on these videos, of course. Make sure you drop a like and subscribe if you guys enjoy content like this. I'll see you guys in the next one.